At 60 years old, Shania Twain is opening up like never before. After decades of silence, the country pop legend has finally confirmed what fans have quietly suspected for years. Behind the bright lights, sold-out tours, and record-breaking hits, there was a story she never fully told until now. Join us as we uncover the untold story behind her shocking confession. A childhood of cold nights and empty plates. Shania Twain's story began far from the bright lights of fame. She was born Eileen Regina Edwards on August 28, 1965 in Windsor, Ontario, Canada. When she was just 2 years old, her parents split up and life quickly became difficult. Her mother, Sharon, struggled to raise her children alone. Money was always short, and there were many nights when the family didn't know how they would make it through the week. A few years later, Sharon met and married a man named Jerry Twain, an Ojibwa from northern Ontario. He adopted Eileen and her sisters, giving them his last name, Twain. That's how the world would later come to know her as Shania Twain. The family moved to a small, rough mining town called Timmins. Winters there were long and brutally cold, with temperatures dropping far below freezing. Their home was tiny and often drafty, and there were many times when the electricity was cut off because the bills couldn't be paid. Sometimes there wasn't enough food in the house, and the children went to bed hungry. Shania would later talk about how her stomach would ache from hunger and how her mother did everything she could to stretch what little they had. To survive, they lived off the land. Jerry hunted moose, and they fished in nearby rivers and lakes. Some nights, dinner was just a piece of bread with mustard spread on it. It wasn't because they liked it, it was all they had. When things got especially hard, the family moved from one place to another, often several times in a single year, just to avoid unpaid rent or overdue bills. Stability was a luxury they couldn't afford. Even with all these struggles, Sharon never gave up on her daughter's potential. She noticed early on that Shania had a natural gift for singing. By the age of 3, she was already performing songs around the house, and her mother was determined to help her develop that talent. Despite their poverty, Sharon would save up just enough for gas money to drive her daughter to small talent shows in nearby towns, sometimes hundreds of miles away. They couldn't afford nice clothes or instruments, but Sharon believed in her daughter's voice and her determination. Those long drives, often through icy northern roads, were more than just trips to perform. They were lessons in sacrifice and love. Shania saw firsthand how much her mother was willing to give for her dreams. It planted a deep sense of responsibility and drive in her. She learned early that success doesn't come easy. It's earned through hard work and perseverance, even when life feels impossible. Through all the cold nights and empty plates, young Shania never stopped dreaming. Her childhood was far from glamorous, but it built her strength. It shaped the woman who would later sing her heart out to the world, using every bit of pain and struggle as fuel. And little did anyone know then, this small-town girl from Timmins was just getting started. The bar singer at age 8. By the time Shania Twain was only 8 years old, her childhood had already turned into a job. While other kids were sleeping or playing, she was standing on stage in smoky bars, singing long after midnight. Her mother, Sharon, would take her to local clubs around Timmins and nearby towns so she could perform for a little cash. The money she earned, around $20 a night, helped buy groceries or pay part of a bill. It wasn't just about music, it was about survival. Those bars were rough places. They were filled with loud voices, cigarette smoke, and drunk men. The environment wasn't safe for a young girl. Shania was often the only child in the room, and not everyone treated her kindly. She has spoken about how some men tried to touch her or make her uncomfortable while she sang. To protect herself, she started wearing layers of clothing, sometimes 2 or 3 bras at once, to hide her growing body and avoid attention. It was her way of feeling a little safer in a place where she shouldn't have had to be at all. Even though it was scary, Shania never stopped performing. She knew her family needed the money, and she wanted to help her mother. By the time she turned 10, she had already performed in more than 100 bar shows. She became known around town as the little girl with a big voice. Each show was another night she stayed up late, often returning home just a few hours before school. Despite being exhausted, she kept going because she felt it was her responsibility. Music became her only escape from everything happening around her. When she sang, she could forget for a few moments about the cold house, the empty kitchen, and the tension at home. Around the same age, she started writing her own songs. Her first song, "Mama, Won't You Come Out to Play," reflected her sadness and worry about her mother's emotional pain. Writing songs helped her process the things she couldn't talk about. It was a quiet outlet for a child carrying more than her share of burdens. Behind closed doors, life in the Twain household was painful and frightening. Jerry Twain, her stepfather, had a violent temper that controlled every part of their lives. He often beat Sharon, sometimes in front of the children. The violence wasn't rare. It was part of their daily life. Shania and her siblings grew up in fear, never knowing what might set him off. Sharon's depression made things even harder. Some days, she couldn't get out of bed, and Shania had to take care of her brothers and sisters herself. The responsibility of keeping everyone safe fell on her shoulders at a young age. She learned to stay quiet, to move carefully, and to read every situation before speaking. In 1975, when Shania was 10, something truly horrifying happened. During one of Jerry's violent outbursts, he beat Sharon so badly that Shania thought her mother was dead. In a desperate attempt to protect her, Shania hit Jerry with a chair. He turned on her and punched her in the face. She was just a child, but she stood her ground. That same year, her life took an even darker turn. Jerry began to touch her in ways that were wrong. It was something she kept secret for years, too afraid and ashamed to tell anyone. The abuse left deep scars, both physical and emotional. She learned early how to hide pain, how to act strong even when she felt broken inside. Living in that home taught Shania how to survive. She became tough, quiet, and determined. Music was the only thing that gave her comfort. Every song she wrote or sang became a piece of her strength. And soon, the world outside those cold walls would start to see the voice she had been fighting to protect all along. The car crash that changed everything. In November 1987, Shania Twain's world changed forever. She was just 22 years old when her parents, Sharon and Jerry Twain, were killed in a tragic head-on collision with a logging truck near the small Ontario town of Chapleau. They had been driving to a job site early that morning. The news hit Shania like a wave she couldn't escape. One phone call ended the only stability she had ever known. Her parents were gone in an instant, leaving behind 3 younger siblings, Mark, Daryl, and Carrie Ann, who suddenly had no one to care for them. Instead of chasing her dreams, Shania was forced to put her own life on hold. She became the head of the family overnight. At 22, she was now a mother, sister, and provider. The grief was heavy, but the responsibility was even heavier. She refused to let her siblings be separated or placed into foster care. To keep them together, she took any job she could find, doing whatever was needed to pay rent and buy food. Her first big opportunity came when she was hired as a singer at the Deerhurst Resort in Huntsville, Ontario. It was a tourist resort that offered stage shows, live music, and entertainment. For Shania, it was both a lifeline and a new beginning. The job gave her steady income, a roof over her family's head, and a place to keep her siblings safe. Every night, she performed for crowds of vacationers, singing covers of popular songs and learning how to command a stage. During the day, she took care of her brothers and sister, made their meals, helped them with school, and tried to create some kind of normal life for them. The resort job was where the artist now known as CZ Twain truly began to form. She used her stepfather's last name to honor the man who had raised her. And Shania, inspired by an Ojibwa word meaning "I'm on my way," became her new first name. It was more than just a stage name, it was a rebirth. Through tragedy, she was reinventing herself. Every night she stepped on stage, she left behind the girl who grew up in fear and poverty and became a woman determined to make something of her pain. By 1991, after several years at Deerhurst, Shania decided it was time to take a chance on her dream. She moved to Nashville, Tennessee, the heart of country music, with little money and big hopes. At first, life was tough. She cleaned houses and sang at small gigs, sending money back home whenever she could. Record executives didn't seem interested in her. They said her sound didn't fit what they wanted, and that she didn't have the traditional country style they were looking for. Despite countless rejections, she refused to give up. In 1993, Mercury Records finally offered her a deal. It wasn't glamorous, she had little creative control, and her debut album sold poorly. Still, it was a start. She had her foot in the door, even if no one was paying much attention yet. Something huge was coming next, and it would change country music forever. Passion and power. When Shania Twain met Robert John Mutt Lange in 1993, it felt like a turning point waiting to happen. At the time, she was still an unknown singer, struggling to make her mark in Nashville. Mutt, on the other hand, was one of the most successful rock producers in the world, known for shaping the sounds of Def Leppard, AC/DC, and Bryan Adams. He had heard her debut album and was drawn to her voice. What started as a professional phone call quickly turned into something deeper. Within 6 months, they met in person, fell in love, and got married that same year in December 1993. Their partnership was more than romantic. It was creative, intense, and unstoppable. Together, they began working on her second album, The Woman in Me. Mutt encouraged her to write her own songs and to take full control of her music, something she hadn't been allowed to do before. Shania fought hard for her voice to be heard in the studio, refusing to let producers or record executives box her into a traditional country mold. She wanted her music to sound fresh and reflect who she really was. The result was unlike anything Nashville had ever heard. The Woman in Me blended classic country storytelling with pop and rock influences. Some thought it was risky, others thought it was genius. When it was released in 1995, it didn't just challenge the rules of country music, it changed them. The songs were catchy, bold, and full of confidence. Shania's voice was strong but warm, and her lyrics spoke about independence, love, and resilience. The mix of electric guitars with fiddle and steel gave her music a new kind of energy that stood out from anything on the radio. In 1997, Shania and Mutt released Come On Over, and it became one of the biggest albums in music history. It sold over 40 million copies worldwide, breaking records for a female artist. The songs You're Still the One Man, I Feel Like a Woman, and From This Moment On became anthems for a generation. Each track carried her signature blend of strength and vulnerability, celebrating love, confidence, and self-worth. Behind the success, though, cracks were starting to show in her marriage with Mutt. Their work together was brilliant, but the intensity also created tension. Still, Shania kept performing and poured everything she had into her music. Her Come On Over World Tour was a phenomenon, lasting nearly 2 years with 165 shows across North America, Europe, and beyond. The tour earned over $80 million and featured guest appearances by Elton John and the Backstreet Boys, proving her universal appeal. By the end of the 1990s, Shania Twain wasn't just a star, she was a force. But even at the height of fame, life was about to test her in ways no one could imagine. Something darker was waiting just around the corner: the illness that stole her voice. In 2003, Shania Twain's life took another unexpected turn. During a horseback ride in the countryside, she was bitten by a tick. At first, it seemed like a small thing, but within weeks, strange symptoms began to appear. She started to feel dizzy and weak, sometimes blacking out for seconds at a time. Her voice, the one that had carried her through every hardship, began to crack and fade. Doctors couldn't explain what was happening. She went through countless tests and visits to specialists, but no one had answers. It took years before she was finally diagnosed with Lyme disease, a condition caused by a bacterial infection spread through tick bites. The illness affected her nervous system and caused damage to her vocal cords. The nerves that controlled her voice began to misfire, leading to a condition called dysphonia. For a singer, it was devastating. She described feeling like her voice was trapped, unable to produce the sound she wanted. Even speaking became difficult at times. The woman who had once filled stadiums now struggled to sing a single note. During concerts, her voice would sometimes break mid-performance. She had moments of panic on stage, terrified the audience would notice. Her throat felt tight and unreliable, but she pushed through, determined to keep going. She often relied on cortisone shots to get through tours, forcing her voice to work when it didn't want to. Fans had no idea she was battling such pain behind the scenes. To the public, she was still the confident performer they admired. Only those closest to her knew how much she was suffering. As time passed, the symptoms grew worse. She experienced dizzy spells, muscle weakness, and constant fatigue. Recording sessions became a struggle, and she started to fear the worst, that she might never sing again. The idea of losing her voice was more than just a medical problem. It felt like losing her identity. Music had been her escape, her way of expressing everything she had lived through, and now even that was slipping away. Still, Shania refused to give up. She took long breaks from performing to focus on her health, exploring therapies, rest, and treatments to regain control of her body. She didn't talk publicly about her illness for many years, choosing instead to stay silent until she was ready to share the truth. What fans didn't see during those quiet years was how much strength it took to simply keep hope alive. Behind every hit song and public appearance was a woman fighting to hold on to her voice. And soon, that battle would become even more personal, leading her to the darkest and most painful chapter of her life: betrayal and breakdown. In 2008, Shania Twain's personal life fell apart. She learned that her husband and producer, Robert John Mutt Lange, was having an affair with her close friend and personal assistant, Marie-Anne Thiebaud. The shock was immediate and deep. Shania later said the pain felt like losing her parents all over again. It wasn't just a broken marriage. It was a loss of trust in two people she had let into her home and her daily life. The emotional impact was severe. Shania spiraled into depression and struggled with dark thoughts. She pulled back from the world and tried to create safety by staying private. Much of this time was spent in Switzerland, where she kept a low profile. She focused on protecting her son and on simply getting through the day. Music, once a safe place, felt heavy and far away. The grief from the breakup stirred the old pain of her childhood and the loss of her parents, which made healing even harder. Then came an unexpected turn. As the truth came out, Shania formed a bond with someone who understood the hurt better than anyone else: Marie-Anne's ex-husband, Frédéric Thiebaud. They connected over shared betrayal and the need to protect their families. Over time, that friendship became love. It was surprising to many, but it gave Shania a sense of peace and support when she needed it most. Slowly, with Frédéric by her side, she began to feel steady again. In January 2011, Shania married Frédéric Thiebaud. The ceremony marked more than a new chapter. It was a choice to move forward. Shania has spoken about the power of forgiveness, not to excuse what happened, but to let go of the weight it placed on her. Forgiveness helped her regain control of her life and focus on what mattered most: her son, her health, and her voice. That same year, she stepped back into public life with the docuseries Why Not? With Shania Twain. The series followed her efforts to confront fear, understand the damage Lyme disease had done to her voice, and find a path back to singing. Viewers saw her take vocal therapy, meet with experts, and face the stage again after years of silence. It was honest and vulnerable, and it showed a side of her that fans had never fully seen. Also in 2011, Shania released her autobiography, From This Moment On. In the book, she shared the full story of her childhood, poverty, domestic violence, and abuse, along with the grief of losing her parents and the shock of her husband's affair. The writing was clear and direct. She explained what she had lived through and how she kept going. Many readers praised her for her strength and for speaking plainly about trauma. The public responded with respect and empathy. For many, the book turned Shania from a superstar into a survivor they could relate to. With a new marriage, a clearer mind, and a more open voice, Shania was ready to try again. Next comes the hard fight to rebuild her sound and step back onto the stage. The long road back to her voice. For Shania Twain, losing her voice wasn't a short setback. It lasted for about 15 years. After Lyme disease damaged the nerves that guided her vocal cords, she developed dysphonia, a condition that made her voice tight, shaky, and unreliable. Singing, something she had done since childhood, suddenly felt out of reach. Even everyday talking could be hard. The loss cut deep because her voice wasn't just her job, it was the center of who she was. She grieved it like a part of herself had gone missing. Doctors tried to help with therapy and rest. She worked with specialists and trained her muscles to respond again. But progress was slow, and the fear never fully left. She worried that the voice people knew might never return. She stayed quiet for long stretches, focusing on her health and family, trying to accept that her career might be over. Still, she kept looking for answers. In 2018, she took a major step. Surgeons performed an open-throat procedure and placed Gore-Tex implants to support her vocal cords. She was awake for parts of the surgery and sang during the operation so doctors could fine-tune the placement. It was scary and demanding, but it gave her a real chance. Afterward came months of careful healing and patient work. She had to learn to sing again from the beginning, note by note, breath by breath. The voice that returned wasn't exactly the same. It was deeper, rawer, and more textured, but it carried new power. You could hear years of struggle and strength in it. She embraced that change. Instead of chasing her old sound, she built a new one, shaped by everything she had lived through. Before the surgery, Shania had already made a bold return to recording. In 2017, she released Now, her first studio album in 15 years, and it debuted at #1. The songs were honest and clear. They talked about heartbreak, healing, and finding yourself again after life breaks you down. You could hear both the weight and the hope in her voice. She wrote the material herself, drawing from private pain and slow recovery, and shared it without hiding. Now marked a full-circle moment. She reclaimed the visual cues fans loved, like the leopard print, while shifting the sound to match her new voice. The production leaned into warm guitars, steady drums, and vocals that didn't pretend to be perfect. The imperfections told the story. Listeners connected to the strength beneath the scars. Shania later admitted how close she came to walking away from music for good. The years of silence, the fear of failure, and the pressure of a comeback all pushed her toward quitting. What stopped her was the need to express herself, and the support of people who believed the voice she had, changed as it was, still mattered. She chose to move forward, to sing as she is, not as she once was. Her journey back wasn't quick or easy, but it gave her a new sound and a new purpose. And next we'll see how a near-death battle pushed that resolve even further. A brush with death. In 2020, during the first year of the pandemic, Shania Twain became seriously ill with COVID-19. Because she also lives with asthma, the virus hit her especially hard. Pneumonia set in. Her lungs filled with fluid day after day, and breathing became a struggle. What started as a frightening illness quickly turned into a medical emergency. She was airlifted to receive specialized care and given plasma therapy for days to keep her stable. At one point, she flatlined. The people around her fought to pull her back. She later learned that doctors chose not to tell her how close she was to dying. They focused on each hour, keeping her alive and buying time for her body to fight. For Shania, the experience was both terrifying and life-changing. She remembers the smallest things about those days, how hard it was to pull air into her lungs, how tired her body felt, and how quiet the room went when fear took over. After she survived, she described a new kind of gratitude. Every breath felt like a miracle. That simple statement held everything she had been through, the danger, the relief, and the new awareness that followed. Recovery wasn't instant. It took time to regain strength and let the lungs heal. But as she got better, something else returned too. The urge to create. The brush with death cleared space in her mind. It reminded her why she started making music in the first place, to say what she couldn't hold inside. She began writing again with a sharper focus, She knew life could change in a moment, and she wanted to use the time she had to sing, record, and connect without hesitation. After the worst passed, Shania stepped back into public life with a new steadiness. She gave interviews, appeared in documentaries, and spoke openly about the illness, her long fight with her voice, and the lessons she learned. She didn't hide the fear, the weakness, or the slow pace of recovery. She also didn't hide her determination. She said, "I forgave everything, even my own voice, for leaving me." That line showed how deeply she had accepted the losses of the past and how ready she was to keep moving. Her post-pandemic outlook was stronger than before. She treated every performance like a gift. She leaned into a sound that fit her now, deeper, lived in, and honest. The message behind the music grew clearer too. Survival isn't only physical, it is emotional and artistic as well. She had survived illness, heartbreak, and years of silence. Now she was building a future that honored all of it. Fans responded to that honesty. They heard the fight in her voice and the calm in her words. They saw a woman who was not trying to be who she once was, but was proud of who she had become. This chapter made one thing certain: Shania Twain isn't going anywhere. And next comes what she finally admits at 60, that fans always felt in their hearts. If you enjoyed this story and want more deep dives into the real lives behind the fame, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss an upload.